Good morning. September 13th Executive Committee meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. All right, I'm gonna need everybody's silence. I can speak, but my voice is still not good. I don't know if you can hear it, and so I'm trying my best. So I can't be very, very loud, so my apologies, but I will do my best that I can. So again, good morning. September 13th Executive Committee meeting is called to order. I'd like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation. Please go ahead.
Good morning. This is an announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom por su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start our meeting with a tribal acknowledgement. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respects to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Guiño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuillay. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy and we aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experience in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, if you could please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please confirm quorum?
Thank you and good morning. I can confirm quorum with 6 voting jurisdictions and 1 advisory member that are present. And also, before we proceed to non-agenda comments, I would like to remind everyone in the room today that this meeting will be conducted in an orderly manner to ensure that the public has an opportunity to be heard and the members' discussions and deliberations are not disrupted. We want to hear from every person who has comments on the subject of today's meeting, but I will insist that comments remain on topic. No comments shall use loud, threatening, profane, or abusive language that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting and will not be tolerated. Language or any other disorderly conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting is prohibited. Based on these factors, the chairwoman has determined that for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 1 minute for their comments. And also as a reminder, we do not, for the voting members, we do not use voting pads for the executive committee. So please remember to raise your hands when you would like to speak and for voting. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The first item on the agenda is our item number 1, non-agenda public comment. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. I would also like to remind the public that we take the first 5 public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and the remainder will be taken at the end of the meeting. The first 5 commenters are Cesar Javier, Purita Javier, Jim Bennett, Truth, and Mary Davis. At the end of the meeting, I will take allegedly Audra, Mark, Paul the Bold, and phone number 672. Cesar Javier, please come to the podium. And I see you have Purita Javier as well. We will reset the timer after your minute, Cesar.
For Madam Vargas.
Okay. Thank you, SANDAG. I am Purita A. Javier, victim of toxicity since 1997, and my husband, Cesar B. Javier, beginning in 2012 from next door. Ceramics manufacturing and kiln industrial home business since 1984, owned and operated by Donald J. Fraser and wife Evelyn Fraser, located at 5238 Shrimpview Drive, San Diego, California 92105, and situated in a residential zone designated community. Science through research and studies explains that hazards in ceramics are contaminants or airborne particulates from firing kilns and even toxic dust
Ma'am, your
when
time has expired.
inhaled.
If you could please turn the microphone over to Cesar, please. Thank you.
It's a blessing. The man behind this predicament, community issue is right there. Mr. Elo Rivera, our homeowners association manager, supposed to be. The rule for this has been revised during his consistent absenteeism at the Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. I am here to attest to you that this man, please, Mr. Rivera, be professional. This is the highest forum we attended, and please do not influence through your unacceptable public servant services. We are forgotten. You know, your CPG planning group has to adjourn September because they do not have item to discuss. What is going around?
Sir, your time has expired. Our next commenter, Jim Bennett, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Truth.
Good morning. I'm Jim Benedict, and thank you very much for letting me speak today. I live in Del Mar, and my comments are about the 3 tunnel options being proposed, option A, B, and C. And I want to make you, the board members, aware today of your staff is doing a terrific job of sabotaging option A. Mistruths, half-truths, complete fabrications, all emanating out of your staff. Not sure if you're aware. And I believe that the SANDAG decision makers, the board of directors, not staff, don't know much about the staff's shenanigans. And I'm limited today to speak, but I'm happy to meet with any of the board members offline to talk about these facts. Your board members are walking on a dangerous path, especially regarding eminent domain. And SANDAG's refusal to release information that we have requested 3 times through the Freedom of Information Act. Bet you didn't know that. You are being kept in the dark. And if you would like to meet
When
with
your
me-
time has expired, our next commenter, Truth, please, sir, your time has expired. Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by the final commenter at this time, Mary Davis.
All right, ain't that the truth? Happy lucky 13. How I spent my summer. I did art, ate chocolate and gelato in UTC, and then ran into somebody who works for government. Luckily, I liked that person. Then I celebrated my birthday with the National City crew and then kept celebrating with the IB crew. I'll discuss that more later. Here's proof, okay? You don't get these from not speaking. SANDAG staff Omar Atayi said that SANDAG funded bike lanes save lives. Okay, where's the data proving that you saved any lives at all? David said he personally knows 4 people who ended up in the hospital and 1 person who died due to bollards. And then there was 48-year-old Ryan Curran Encinitas. Remember, from the amended Transit Extension Plan, provision number 3, quote, all projects funded under this ordinance shall accommodate travel by pedestrians and bicycles, except where the cost of including bikeways and walkways would be excessively disproportionate to the need or probable use. Such facilities shall be designed to the best standards and guidelines, end quote. Neither being followed, why not? And question, the gigantic tour buses that keep taking illegal migrants from the southern border to Mission Valley hotels, how much is this contributing to congestion and GHG's emissions? Thank you.
Mary Davis, please come to the podium.
Hi, good morning. Mary Davis here, and you're probably guessing, yes, you're right. I'm here to address the sewage, which I'll be talking about more. And I do want us to start calling it what it actually is, biochemical hazmat toxins. Our citizens, both here on our side, as well as the residents in Mexico, are being poisoned. And since you are executive leaders, I am looking for executive leadership. The California legislature has greatly expanded your powers. And with those powers comes great responsibility. So I am looking for that leadership, including sanctions, which I will be talking about. I feel like that you've been very remiss the past 5 to 10 years. This agency could have been doing far more. And now I'm asking and actually demanding that you flex your political muscle and show some political will. Lastly, I'm not sure if we do have armed security here, but if so, I would like to thank for showing that guns are the most robust means of self-defense, and that CCW concealed carry is the gold standard for personal safety. Thank you.
And that concludes the non-agenda public comments at this time, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Are there any non-agenda member comments at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of things. The first one is back in July, I had brought this up. I would like to have a policy for the Pledge of Allegiance, that anything that we do here at the Board of Directors, that would be the tribal acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance, that we would do that also at our subcommittees. This is a patriotic society, and it's what our country is founded on. So I would like to have that as a policy.
Do we
Because,
need a policy for that?
well, it's not always
just
followed at
asking.
all meetings.
Sure.
It's not always followed at all of our subcommittee meetings.
Okay.
So if it's a policy, then it's just something we follow. I think it would be prudent to do that. And then I wanted to bring up something that my staff had brought up. And that is, I'm not sure if you all know, but there is a group, I think it's called Sandria. And what they're talking about is having each local agency contribute 0.5% of our tax allocation share, our increment share, to regional projects such as the tunneling, the central mobility hub, things like that. They want us to do it. And this is weird that this is happening at the staff level, because I feel like, have we ever taken a vote on this? Because I don't recall anything like that. The city of San Marcos gets the lowest tax increment share countywide at 6.6%. And I would be 100% unwilling for us to do that. So my concern is not necessarily, well, first of all, that it's being talked about at the staff level, which I'm sure none of the board members actually knows. And then that we haven't taken a stand on it. So I'm just not sure why that would be.
Okay, so is this, okay, so why don't we go ahead and direct our CEO to do a little bit more investigating about that status and provide you with a report and share it also with the board. And if there's some action that needs to be taken, we follow up. I don't know anything about it, to be honest.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
because, but this is happening. This
No, that's
thing
fine.
got-
So
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
asking him. to-
Yes.
All right,
So it's 0.5%, I think, for 45 years or something like that.
okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Right. Any other member? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'm not sure if the whole board is aware or if the CEO and the chair have received yet, but Imperial Beach, I believe it was a week or so ago, passed a resolution at their city council requesting, I believe it was 1% of the whole fees for the Otay Mesa East project potentially be applied to the sewage issue. And I'm not bringing that up for discussion or, action today, but I'm asking that potentially that be put on an agenda item at some point for discussion at the board level.
Thank you. Just a reminder that, you can go ahead and keep your, clapping to yourself. Thank you. So, council member, we actually have I think it's October, and we're going to have this conversation a little bit, where we're going to be getting grant funding for a regional environmental justice committee. Is that what, am I saying that right? I think Myra's the Climate Action Committee. And I think that it would be very prudent that that's one of the recommendations that they take a look at as a regional committee to maybe bring forth as a possible financial, what is it called? Oh my gosh.
Mitigation or something.
Yeah, so we can, identify other ways that we can address this issue. So if it's okay with you, we'll share it and ask the CEO to make sure that they keep that in mind, and then work with all of us to figure out if that is even an option.
I appreciate that. And if we could potentially have on that agenda just some discussion about the structure of what is being proposed, how that group's going to work, because to me, when I received the information about it, it did seem somewhat different than maybe what the board had contemplated when the language was added on the motion. So again, not a big disagreement. Maybe we could just have a brief open
My
discussion.
comments at the board will talk a little bit about that if you wish. How we're addressing what was asked for us from the board, and also what's coming up about the potential grant, the working group. And also we did receive the letter. Actually, I was on the phone this morning with city manager of Imperial. So I can brief you guys more a little bit at the board of directors comments.
Great. I appreciate that. I know we'd scheduled a call that I wasn't able to make, and your staff has reached out for a meeting with me. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Any other member comments on non-agenda items? Oh, no. All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to consent items 2 to 4. Do we have any public comments on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I do have 3 in-person and 2 virtual public comments on the consent agenda. I'll remind the public this is items 2 and 3. Allegedly, Audra will be followed by Truth and then Mark.
So you were talking about housing, and I'm just wondering if, because we know that the illegal immigrants who are crossing the border are getting housing, and if they are getting in line before the people in the communities, that's a problem. So I think there should be some kind of a board policy that you are not going to be giving them first in line ability to get housing over the people, if at all, because this incentivizes them to come across. And we've already had a 5-year-old be raped in the community, all because we're a sanctuary. And so that's a problem when we are enticing people to come across the border and we're giving them health care, RCA checks, refugee cash assistance checks, transportation, hotels. They're getting everything and anything under the sun. And it's unfortunate when they are committing crimes and they're getting things that are going above the people in the community that have been suffering for a very long time and deserve it over them. So it shouldn't be something that we're even thinking about doing before.
And your time has expired. Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Mark and then Paul the Bull.
Item 2, the minutes omitted that Sean dragged his $6,000 e-bike into this meeting room to virtue signal his privilege. And for the record, I have a photo of Jacktivist teaching Sean how to ride an e-bike. The minutes also did not know that Nora once again had an unexcused absence. So there needs to be a policy where anyone who misses more than 3 meetings without a publicly approved reason is permanently removed from all boards and all committees. The minutes also say we don't know what the heck number 813, the broken record Consuelo, talked about. But it was about how SANDAG wastes our tax dollars on United Nations Agenda 21 inspired projects. Item 3, in 2 weeks, will Mario be able to hack me giving him a hard time for 60 seconds straight after his probably 20-minute report? And what is the mystery proposed action? Item 4, Dawn's going to have a report. I'm glad she didn't get flattened. And for item 9, will Antoinette be able to handle me tearing apart the entire conceptual fallacies of computer modeling inputs and outputs technocracy? On October 11th, I look forward to the toll back office system update with none of the people here who fixed or didn't fix it. Why can't SANDAG as a whole be flattened permanently? Thank you.
Mark, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Paul LeBold and the final commenter, phone number 672.
Mark, as Rosa Corey stated, expert California court witness in the video on YouTube, you can find it putting in Rosa Corey Part 1. The real title is longer. Corey is Koire. So UN Agenda 21 is what is controlling our government. It's absolutely bullshit and totally against any idea of sovereignty. The idea of climate change, now you guys have the OTI May support, and the fees are giving you unbelievable amounts of money to do Agenda 21 goals on us that are totally made up and made to destroy us. The idea of climate change, there is climate change. It's not caused by man-made oil emissions, hardly at all. The fires, a few more degrees, 10 more degrees does not start a fire. Fires start at 660 degrees to combust wood. Floods, Mission Valley was flooded long before a river was there, much worse than it is now. Also the flooding at the beach, they made the wall in 19.
And your time has expired. Our next commenter, Paul LeBold, please go ahead. Please unmute. All right, I will move ahead to phone number 6-7. Oh,
Sorry.
okay, go ahead.
Please be more careful with the meeting minutes. Item 12 on today's board agenda is interesting. Looks like I spoke twice. Actually, the phone I used wasn't working, so I used another. And please change Rita's name on item 12 from Cement to Clement. This continues to be pretty sketchy. The non-agenda comments is a list of names, no indication of what they spoke about or the wild applause. A prime example is items 5 and 7. 5, policy committee actions. The board of directors was asked to ratify the actions, etc. 7, conflict of interest code updates. The board of directors was asked to approve the updated conflict of interest code. Pretty much what the agenda says. Why bother with the minutes when you can do this in seconds, right? Not. And does SANDAG really represent?
And your time expired. Our final commenter, phone number 672. Please go ahead. And you are, there you go.
Okay, broken record here. Yes, ditto to all the previous callers and speakers. Yeah, it is a shame. It's a shame regarding the housing and how it is that we are forgetting our own as usual. And good job. And it's just it's unfortunate that so many are suffering, and political supposed leaders who are so reckless and just they don't care. Anyway, that's all I got.
And that concludes the public comments at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mario.
Yes, we wanted to see if we could add a agenda item for the 927 consent. And this is for awarding the contract for the Uptown Bike Eastern Hillcrest Bikeway, as well as amending the budget. When the budget amendment came for the bike program, it was mentioned that the city of San Diego was going to contribute for that project. They're ready to contribute. So the budget amendment will be to be able to accept those funds from the city of San Diego. So that's what we're proposing to add into the consent calendar for the 927 meeting.
All right. If Any of the board members like to put an item on the consent agenda, or if you have questions or comments on the items, please let me know. Councilmember Shu?
Turn on my mic. I'd like to make a suggestion on the items on the next two agendas for the regular board meeting. So on the consent calendar, so 3A, and then on that, I think it's number 9, and I want to get to it. And for the next regional plan, reviewing various concepts. And this may be a general comment first is, and I don't know if this needs to be written into the draft agenda, but it would be particularly interesting.
For
if-
which draft agenda, just to, because I didn't hear.
It's on item number 9 of the September 27th
I remember that, okay.
agenda, which is the regional plan. And specifically here, last year, our board passed a resolution looking towards reducing health impacts from our next regional plan. And I think it would be great to be sure that we look at different ideas on how to do that, as well as how to measure that. So that's on number 9 of the September 27th agenda.
Okay, so I just, let me go through each one. So I think that I think we can do duly noted and make sure that the staff. is
Exactly.
including that
I'm
component.
not suggesting
Cool. Okay.
an actual change in the language there. I think staff knows what to do there. On the next item, there might be a need to actually change the language on the draft agenda. That's for the October 11th meeting, item 7, and see if I can get to it. So that's dealing with SB 375. And that's great that we're addressing that. What I want to also suggest is that we also address this CARB scoping plan for reduction of VMT. That's a major item which is part of state law. And I know though SANDAG may not be required to reach those goals, CEQA and the rules of CEQA implore us to include it as an alternative to meet those rules in our regional plan. So
So let me, I don't know if I understand the request. So just, can you clarify it for me? So the scoping plan for CARB has passed. So are you asking to ensure that the recommendations from the scoping plan are included in the SB 37 target setting process?
that's maybe part of this item when we discuss that, at least in terms of what are some alternatives to meet the scoping plan.
So maybe could it be possible that the request on this item, so the item is SB 375 target setting process 2026 update, and ask the team to include what is, how does this connect to, or,
Right.
you know, to the CARB scoping plan, right?
Yeah.
As one of the
Right.
goals that we might
Right,
have, that we
because
need to achieve.
it's related to this. So if we could include that in the discussion and presentation, I think that's my only suggestion towards that agenda.
You got it. All right, any other, I think it's duly noted and we'll make sure that it's part of it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Chair. I would like to the September 27th meeting in the consent that we have a policy, the policy that I had referred to earlier about the tribal acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance to be at all of our meetings, including our policy advisory committees and working groups.
Can I ask you a favor? Could we give the team a little leniency so that they can work on the policy and bring it back? Because we have to bring it back to policy committee.
Sure.
So your request is duly noted, and then I'll ask them to come back with a timeline and follow up with you about what that process is, because it has to go through policy, right? Just to be,
So an amendment to board policy, which it sounds like this is the request, would typically start with the executive committee here and then work its way up to the board. So we can certainly work something up for your consideration and bring it back to this committee if that's your preference.
because I know you giving me a specific date of September 27th. I don't want to not get you what you need. And so I want to make sure we follow process. If it's okay with you, the team can get back to you about, can it be on the September 27th or in October, depending on I don't know when policy committee is
Yes,
meeting and all that good
As
stuff.
long as I honestly, if it's at our executive committee, October, as long as we don't cancel that meeting, it would be fine to see it at the executive and then at the board meeting that day, that would be fine.
Okay, I don't
That'd
know.
be
when we cancel,
acceptable.
but Okay.
So we want me to come up with some verbiage and where it would.
No,
fit,
no, no.
Or, okay, all right.
No, no,
So
no.
it seems like it would be a simple addition. but-
Yeah, so
yeah.
I don't have a problem with, it's not that it's not simple, and I think we all, totally fine. I just want to make sure we follow a process, right? The process is the policy process and what that looks like and how we bring it back into committee. That's all I'm asking, and I don't know all the details, so happy to
Yeah,
do that.
No problem.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You got it. Anything else?
Move
Oh.
approval.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? Okay, motion carries unanimously. And then- Next item on the agenda is item number 4, the legislative status report. I'm going to turn it over to Hannah. Hannah.
Hannah Stern is our Director of Government Relations, and she'll present her team.
Good morning, Chairwoman, Vice Chairs, and members of the Executive Committee. My name is Hannah Stern. I'm the Manager of Government Relations here at SANDAG, and we are here to present the legislative report. I wanted to start off the report today by introducing you to the newest member of the Government Relations team, Ryan Williams. Ryan comes to us from the office of U.S. Senator LaFonza Butler, and he will soon become a familiar face to you all as he will be presenting the federal report moving forward. For the federal report, it's been a quiet August on the legislative front as the August district work period for Congress has sent members back to their districts. We also had federal officials out in the field in August, and we were happy to welcome 2 of them to San Diego. We hosted GSA's Commissioner of the Public Building Service, Elliot Dooms, and Deputy Secretary of State Richard Verma, both at the Otay Mesa East point of entry site. The visit to Otay Mesa East coincided with the work that we continue to do to negotiate the federal project agreement for Otay Mesa East port of entry. The House and Senate returned this week to help with the main task of keeping the federal government open. In keeping with recent tradition, Congress has not sent a budget to the president yet, and we will need to pass a continuing resolution or CR in order to avoid a government shutdown on August 1st. The House will likely require bipartisan support for any bill that comes out of that chamber, which means we'll likely see a clean CR or a CR that doesn't contain substantive policy provisions. The Senate has yet to act. Once a continuing resolution is passed, we anticipate that members will head back to their district and likely not return to Washington until after the election, and we expect any funding decisions will be postponed until after the election. With that, I will hand it over to Jose Alvarez for the state report.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. The legislature returned from summer recess on August 5th and following a chaotic final month concluded the 2023-24 legislative session on August 31st. This year's legislative session was marked by a focus on climate action, housing, and transportation policy. Lawmakers advanced bills to address climate change, including measures to enhance renewable energy infrastructure and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Housing, as you can imagine, remained a top priority for the legislature, with efforts to increase affordability and streamline development processes. However, many bills face challenges due to the state's dire fiscal situation. Transportation policy also saw significant attention, particularly around improving rail infrastructure and reducing BMT as part of the state's broader environmental goals. Overall, this session reflected California's ongoing commitment to sustainability and equity despite economic and political hurdles. During the July 12 Executive Committee meeting, the Government Relations team requested this committee's approval for support positions on SB 1098 and AB 2485. Since that day, we've seen major developments on both bills. Senate Bill 1098 by Senator Catherine Blakespear aimed to enhance the Lawson Rail Corridor by aligning state and local actions to improve passenger services and develop capital projects across the corridor. Passed the Assembly floor with unanimous support and is now at the governor's desk awaiting his signature. This final version of the bill requires the State Transportation Agency, upon an appropriation from the legislature, to form a working group, including SANDAG and other MPOs across the corridor, to develop long-term recommendations for passenger and freight service in the corridor, and submit these recommendations in a report to the legislature. Following the direction from this committee, staff sent a letter to the governor communicating SANDAG support for the bill. Another SANDAG supported legislation, Assembly Bill 2485, authored by Assemblymember Juan Carrillo and sponsored by the Southern California Association of Governments, aimed to increase transparency in the regional housing needs determination process. This bill would have required the Department of Housing Community Development to publish data and the methodology used for calculating each region's housing needs. And it would also have required the department to convene an expert panel to advise on these calculations. Despite unanimous support, the bill was held by the Senate Appropriations Committee on August 15 due to concerns about the ongoing costs associated with implementing these changes. The Department of Housing and Community Development identified a cost in the low millions to implement the policies in the bill. And it was held in the Appropriations Committee. Governor Newsom has until September 30 to sign or veto all bills at his disposal. Staff is currently tracking a portfolio of priority legislation that has passed and has been sent to the governor. We'll be coming back next month with an update on what has been signed into law. In other news, the California Transportation Commission was in San Diego last month for their August commission meeting. SANDAG, alongside Caltrans District 11 and the North County Transit District, hosted a tour of North County projects that the commission has funded throughout the years. The commissioners and staff were able to visit future sites for the new San Diego Lagoon and Barranquito Lagoon bridges, as well as the completed San Elijo Lagoon pedestrian bridge in the city of Encinitas. That tour went very well. It was very well received by the commission. Many commissioners expressed their contentment with the projects and the tour during their two-day meeting. That wraps up my report today, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Venegas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm here to give you an update on our Borders program. And I will begin with an update on our work with the tribes in our San Diego region. As you know, San Diego region is home to 18 Native American reservations represented by 17 tribal governments in the most of any in the country, in the United States. Executive Order 13175 requires consultation and coordination with tribal governments. In this regard, among many other activities, just a few weeks ago, you held the 2024 Tribal Summit. And later this month, your Borders Committee will receive the first recap report from the quadrennial summit. Currently, SANDAG is collaborating with the tribes on efforts to include new tribal priorities in the 2025 regional plan initial concept. And on another note, I want to offer you a quick update on our work with Mexico. This past month of June, elections were held to elect the new president and new members of Congress and several state governors and legislatures and municipal authorities. For the first time in 200 years, a woman will be president of Mexico, Mrs. Claudia Sheinbaum of the ruling party Morena. She was elected with more than 60% of the vote and a 30-point lead over the second finisher. The new federal Congress also reflects a majority on the ruling party in the two houses, diputados and senators, and has already started sessions since the 1st of this month. The new president will take office on October 1st in a few weeks for a 6-year administration that is from 2024 to 2030. The newly elected municipal authorities just south of the border also take office on the same day, October 1st. And south of the border, there will be a new mayor, Ismael Burgueño, as well as Leonel Cota Montaño in Tecate and Rocío Adame in Playas de Rosarito. And why am I mentioning this? Not only because we know that more than 100,000 San Diegans have decided to keep their homes in Mexico, but returning every day to San Diego, back to their works and their schools. but also because every 12 years, Mexico's elections coincide with our country's election, and this is the case of this year, 2024. So the two new administrations will coincide. And soon, both will be reviewing the new free trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, better known as USMCA. So they will be reviewing what works well, what is not. And this will be in 2026, just in 15 months, and this is just around the corner. And we are working with our legislators here because they are already analyzing opportunities and challenges that this represents for our region. I would like to add that trade relationship with Mexico is very important for our country and for our region. It allows us to gain a competitiveness in a new global order. In fact, last year, Mexico became the main commercial partner for the United States with an estimated trade of almost $800 billion, which is 16% of all of our trade in the world. This partly explains the congestion that we see in our border crossings, which are all among the busiest, not only in the state, but in the whole country. But unfortunately, everything has a cost. We also suffer serious environmental impacts, such as air pollution and the dire situation of the Tijuana River and the Pacific Ocean. In this regard, I would like to comment that Mexican authorities confirm that the repairs to the San Antonio de los Buenos treatment plant, which currently discharge untreated water into the ocean, will be completed by the Mexican Army engineers by the end of this month, as it was committed. They also reported that although civil structure will be 100% complete, additional electromechanical works will still be needed, which is estimated to be completed by November. And by the end of that same month, the plant should be in compliance with all standards. Other works that Tijuana is doing is repairing their pumping system and considerations to reuse of water. And in the United States, the International Boundary and Water Commission just announced that it had been awarded the contract for the design, repair, and construction of the International Wastewater Treatment Plant project. Earlier this year, your Borders Committee received an update on cross-border sewage and requested that it be presented to the Board of Directors at upcoming meetings, and your staff is working on that. Finally, I just want to mention two commemorations that are relevant to our work with Mexico and between the two countries is the 40th anniversary of the La Paz Agreement, which are the first document, which is the first document that defined the border zone as 62 miles strip, and also details the bilateral agenda between the United States and Mexico on environmental issues. This agenda is in fact currently reflected in the Border 2025 program. And also the 30th anniversary of NAFTA, which now is replaced by the USMCA, but this former NAFTA created institutions that are important for our work as the North American Development Bank. And with this, I conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Thank you. On public comment on item 4, allegedly Audra, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Truth.
All right, for the port of entry, we got people coming across the border still and they're being hidden, which is, you know, what people want. But since you guys seem to like to be a sanctuary for these people, you should be directing them to this port of entry so that it's easy for Border Patrol to be able to process these people, because otherwise they come across with coyotes, they get raped because they're paying the cartel. There's rape trees that are in Jacamba that just got cleaned up, but they'll have their underwear hanging on them as a trophy for having raped women, men, and children. So I don't know why you guys approve of that, why you think that this is something that should be happening, but it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing to see this happening. And if you direct them to the port of entry, not through the CBP One app, because they'll come through there, but they only get so many appointments. But if you direct them there, then Border Patrol doesn't have to go all over Timbuktu just to hunt them down so that they can be processed. And then you don't have people just getting, I mean, they're dying, dropping from a 30-foot wall. So it's like good, right? It's good that that's happening. Yeah, you should do something about it.
And your time expired. Truth, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Mark, who will be followed by phone number 672 and final commenter Paul the Bold.
We could only dream of a government shutdown. Why does the state have a deficit? Probably because they've blown all our money to increase homelessness, crime, and home prices. SB 1098 for NPOs to ensure private-public fascism via freight money superseding what's best for the people, just like what's been happening to Imperial Beach for decades. Free trade fascism that benefits big corporations and governments like Mexico and their new woman communist president. When will Mexico be held accountable for their pollution and environmental terrorism? When will American reps like Nora stop lying about the toxins we know exist and are not safe? AB 2040-85 would allegedly force the HCD to justify their housing quota lies that very few cities or counties can meet with some data-driven deception and an advisory panel political theater show. It's like asking the county for their data sources, analysis, and methodology for how they can say sewage is safe. I doubt it helps. SANDAG would just waste more tax money and more trips only to keep running into more unrealistic demands from the state crazies. That's why I recommend that y'all advocate for locally based HCD committee to each jurisdiction. And has SANDAG sponsored any bills that would actually improve things or only ask for
Time
more money?
expired. Mark, please come to the podium.
Your well-disguised policies are all totalitarian UN agendas. The only one who's done their constitutional duty at all, that all of you swore to, it isn't here. It's Representative Massey, who has introduced House Resolution H421 to actually abolish the Federal Reserve, audit and abolish. That would actually help the housing, which can't be helped any other way. I mean, even you guys aren't addressing the problem. You're just, it's pretty ridiculous to let there be complete corruption financially and have wealth distribution that's unbelievably unbalanced, and then try and correct it by charging the middle class taxes to try and help the poor. It's criminal and it's intentional, and it's a UN agenda who openly say that they want to control our private property. They don't think we should have the right to control our private property. The guy in Del Mar is right to be upset. I feel really bad for you because these people, most of them might like to help. They can't do much to keep their jobs. And there's a few of the people at the front that are openly against you.
Your time has expired. Our next commenter, Paul the Bold, please go ahead. You'll be followed by the final commenter. Oh, I'm sorry. Next commenter is phone number 672. Will be followed by final commenter, Paul the Bold. Go ahead, 672.
Amen, Mark. This should be actually on the legislative status report. Why is Nora even there leading this meeting? The whole purpose of having an executive meeting is to be free from the influence of the head of the board, isn't it? Shouldn't Zito be leading this meeting? I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but anyways. Okay, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe it's the hydrogen cyanide affecting the brains of the members. Anyways, shame on all the tribes involved. And yeah, who cares the gender of Mexico's president? Is she qualified? Probably a qualified puppet, probably not. And as far as the Tijuana River sewage issue, it's been dire for decades, brother. It's not just been dire, it's been dire for decades. And anyone who has ever had anything to do with this issue years ago should be fired, gone, kaput, Nora. I'm done.
Our final commenter, Paul the Bold, please go ahead.
All right.
You're self-muted.
Good on Mexico for fixing the border stuff, their own part of the border stuff. We should be ashamed. It's a conflict of interest to have Nora chair a committee meeting. The committee was established not to have the board chair's influence. And Zito's sitting right there. I don't know why this business about Nora chairing the meeting. Now, I also think that perhaps Nora should go down to Mexico and investigate how they're so progressive down there that they're actually fixing things way before we do. We haven't even begun the Otay Mesa construction for the border crossing. You know, she should go down there, study the issue.
Your time expired, and that concludes the public comments on item 4.
All right, before I ask for any member comments, I'm just going to ask our Deputy General Counsel to explain to constituents why I chair the Executive Committee.
Oh, thank you, Chairwoman. Per SANDAG's board policies, the chair of the SANDAG Board of Directors is also the chair of the SANDAG Executive Committee.
Thank you. All right, member comments. Yes, sir.
Just a couple of brief comment questions. First, I wanted to welcome Ryan Williams to SANDAG. I'm not sure if anyone on SANDAG knows, but at his prior role at Senator Butler's office, he was responsible for organizing and managing the Tijuana River Valley Working Group, which was a fairly recent creation a month or two ago. And I found it to be a very useful group in the sense that it included officials from federal, state, county, and city with stakeholder agencies involved. And I felt it was a very good informational and dialogue group, and I hope it continues going forward. I just came back from Washington last night and met with Senator Padilla's office and asked them to please encourage that it continue, depending on what happens in the election. I also met with Congressmember Schiff for quite a long time in case he happens to be the victor. And he was very interested in the issue and in supporting that group going forward. So thank you for your work on that and welcome to SANDAG. My next comment in regard to the federal report, I do believe that there will be potentially numerous things included that will pass before the end of the session. Specifically, additional construction maintenance funding for the IBWC has already passed both the House and Senate with different amounts. And after meeting with the 20 different Congress members, including the Speaker of the House, I believe that will be reconciled and will be passed before the end of the session. So that is the agency that obviously runs the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant. And it's just essential that they have those funds for construction and maintenance because not maintaining it is how it broke in the first place. And then just in regard to the Mexican report, sir, I just had a quick question for you. The comment about the Mexico plant coming online by, I believe you said the end of October. I was just curious for the source of that information.
It's direct information from the Mexican authorities, and in fact, it's a commitment of the President of Mexico. He announced and he requests to be built by the end of September. So it's going to be concluded the civil work of the construction by the end of, and they confirmed by the end of this month. But just some electromechanics, which means some boards, electronic boards and this and that, are missing because they ordered and they are just waiting for that. They anticipate they will arrive in October. So the plant will be working in early November and fulfilling all the standards and delivering water with all the standards by the end of November. And that information is from the Mexican government.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I guess my point is twofold. One is I somewhat disagree. I'm certainly encouraged that Mexico is working on the plant, but their commitment was not to finish the construction. Their commitment was that they would flip the switch by the end of September and have the plant operational. I was at the plant with Congress members, state, federal officials, as well as all the Mexican officials and their Army Corps of Engineers. And I'm very grateful, and I understand that things happen. My information I'm getting is that it is not going to be operational probably before the end of the year. However, my goal for Coronado and for my colleagues over there from Imperial Beach is to not have the beaches closed during the summer. And that plant at San Antonio de los Buenos, 6 miles south of the border, is the plant, is the area, I should say, of the sewage discharge that's closing our beaches for almost the entire summer. 70% of the days in Coronado, and Imperial Beach just passed over 1,000 straight days closed. So I appreciate the information. I hope it is accurate and that they do start the plan up at some point before the end of the year or in November, as you say. But I appreciate their commitment to doing it. It is a new day there in regard to this, but I don't think it's accurate to say they lived up to their commitment that they would flip the switch by the end of September, since that's not going to happen. But thank you for the report.
Councilmember.
Thank you. And I really appreciate so many of us here in San Diego, as well as in Sacramento and Washington, trying to address the border issue. I think it's very critical. Something we learned just yesterday by the researchers that are monitoring the air pollution along the river is that simply by adjusting the flow, whether you turn it on or off, has a direct impact on the hydrogen sulfide and maybe the other toxins that are emitted, and preventing them to get to extremely hazardous levels. So I don't know if sometime in the future we may learn, or may hopefully in the near future, if we just adjust that at certain times of the day, on certain days in which the weather is specifically maybe warm or the air is not moving, that we could potentially affect the critical times, keeping the levels at least below some level that is less hazardous. So I really think we need help from both sides of the border to make this condition less toxic. And I appreciate the rest of the report with regards to the big ticket items, Los Angeles corridor, dealing with housing issues and all that. But for the last few times we've had legislative reports, we've also asked if we can look into how we may be able to affect specialized transportation and the grant funding for those. I know that's a small part of the pie compared to the big transportation projects and other things going on. But I didn't see any anything in the report as to say, how are we doing with that? And I know in this year, when we asked for that funding, some of the responses I would hear from people is, well, budgets are tight. There's not a lot of money. But I've heard other legislators in the past tell me, when you need to look for money? When there's no money, when there's a negative flow. That's the best time to look for money because no one else is looking. So,
Member Shu, I don't mean to interrupt you. So I want to do a time check because we're at 10 o'clock, and I know we're also going to hear this item in the board meeting. So I just want to make sure everybody's mindful of that. So go ahead, sir.
yeah, I'll finish just with that. I really hope that we do look into that. And I know that may require augmenting the existing funding for specialized transportation, but I hope we seek avenues to do that. That's something that's been on our agenda for quite a while, and I hope we make some progress. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report to staff. But I just realized that it says that I was absent on the attendance for the executive committee in July. I was not. I was here. So I just wanted to correct that for the record. Didn't notice it when you approved the minutes. Sorry, Chair.
Adjustment. Yes, ma'am.
I have one quick comment. Thank you so much, Chair. This is specifically for Jose. So I'd like for us to watch very closely if there is some legislative change that is to reallocate city property tax increment to SANDAG. Just thinking this through as to the discussions that have been happening behind the scene, I would just like to make sure that no one's talking about that in Sacramento or adding something in as a last minute change to any items, just making sure. And if it does end up happening that there is some discussion about it, I think that the entire board should be notified of such a change. Thank you.
Okay. With that, if there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and take any comments. I mean, we have a motion. I need a motion. I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. All right. Yes, I need to go ahead and finish the non-agenda public comments.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have 4 members of the public who I will call upon at this time. Allegedly Audra, Mark, Paul the Bold, and phone number 672. If you're still present, either be prepared to come to the podium when you're called or raise your hand online. Allegedly Audra, please go ahead.
Yeah, so how cool is it that we are paying for flights from Panama to deport people? $700,000 for 130 people. That's interesting. I'm just wondering if you guys know at the airport that the Border Patrol just brought 3 buses to an Eastern Express Airlines to fly them out probably to Texas. Who knows? It could be Louisiana. But all on our dime. So it's good, right? I mean, how many of you get to fly for free? All of you, because you work here. right? But we don't, and we're paying for it. So I'm just wondering how many of you actually know that that's happening? Anybody? Raise your hand. Every day? Depends on the time. You guys know it, or you really don't? And is this new to you? Does it matter to you that this is happening? Maybe not, because we're just going to some other state, right? It's just interesting to see how many people ignore what's actually happening. And then just like approve it, especially when, 5-year-old gets raped and she's going to have to deal with that for the rest of her life. But kudos to you guys.
Mark, please come to the podium. You'll be followed by Paul the Bolt.
Mark, it's unbelievable how the fires, 660 degrees for wood to combust. People are setting the fires. Who has the motive? The corporatocracy, the global 1% that want global control with the corporations. They have hundreds of billions of dollars apiece. So it's not hard to imagine they can pay some people to set fires. And the UN openly says they want people out of the rural areas, which you guys are working to make happen. Some of you against your will, but you're just stuck. The people running this, they're openly trying hard to make it happen. It's against our sovereignty. There are many people who say that global warming and climate change is total bull. The most reputable people there are. John Coleman, KUSI, put in global warming in his name on YouTube. William Happer. John Coleman was meteorologist of the year. Happer his resume is beyond belief, like controlled the energy for the country. Lord Monkton, many examples of what a scam this is.
Your time has expired. Paul the Bold, please go ahead. You are self-muted.
Oh. Let's see. Sorry, on the conflict of interest thing, I was speaking to logic and not the regulations, which SANDAG probably screwed up. Jack Shue mentioned adjusting the flow in the Tijuana River, and that is exactly why I suggested I think about a year ago at the board of directors, I suggested concrete lining for the river to increase the flow rate. So this is probably a good idea. Now, does SANDAG really represent the whole county? You got Robin Joy Maxon on the board, theoretically representing half the county, yet with no vote. Since SANDAG is in the tax business, this is really taxation without a representation. The proposed Transinet tax requires only.
Your time expired. That concludes the continued non-agenda public comments.
All right, thank you. With that, we adjourn. The next executive committee meeting will be scheduled for Friday, October 11th at 9 a.m. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then start our meeting.